Okay, so up until this point, we've been drawing on our design layers. We've just made sure that everything has been inside our page boundary and we've been able to PDF and print it that way. But there's going to be times where we're going to want to have multiple drawings on one page, or it might not quite fit on our page boundary, or we want to change the scale or change the layer visibilities. So what we can do is, this is our design layers. There's infinite amount of space. This is where we draw. And then where our what is called sheet layers is where we organize our drawings onto our pages that we're going to print out. So we can either click on the icon to the right of our design layers, that's our sheet layers, and I can double click on that icon. That will bring me into my organization palette. Or I can right click on my navigation palette and add a new design layer, or new sheet layer, or I can go up to my layers icon and click on that, which will bring me into my organization palette in my design layers menu. But if I click on my sheet layers, I can add a new menu here. So I can add new. I can call this, right now I have other sheets, so I can call this A3, A for architectural, my third sheet in my architectural set. So this sheet title I'm going to call elevations and hit OK. I can either double click on my elevations, or I can select and edit my elevations and go into page setup. In page setup, I can then go to printer setup. I want to set this for a paper size of tabloid. Landscape, I can hit OK. I want to make sure my pages, my horizontal pages, are 1 and 1 vertical. If, for instance, your page is broken up into multiple sections, just go back and make sure these data fields are both 1 and 1, and you can uncheck your show page breaks. So our printable area is 10.5 inches by 16.5 inches. So that's our 11 by 17 minus our margins. I can hit OK and OK and OK. And what that does is it automatically takes me into the sheet layer I just created. So right now I have 3 sheet layers. They all look the same because they're all the same page size. But what I need to do is I need to get the information from my design layers onto my sheet layers, and I do that with something called a viewport. So I can go back to my design layers. For instance, I'm going to go on my main floor plan. I'm going to just, for clarity, make it active only. I'm going to get out of my rotated plan view. So here is my main floor plan, and right now that is all that I have on my main floor design layer. I'm going to go up to my view, create viewport. And what happens is I'm going to see it brings up this create viewport dialog box. So it gives me this name of a viewport, so I could even specify what I want the name to be. But I can go into my create on layer. So create on layer, I can send this viewport to any of my design or any of my sheet layers, any of my design layers, or from this point I can also create a new sheet layer and create a new design layer. I want this on my main floor plan sheet layer, so that one is the one selected. This is going to be my drawing number 1. I want this drawing title to be main floor. And all the other, I want my scale to be 1/4 inch, my view to be top plan. All the other settings are fine the way they are at this point. I'm going to hit OK. And what that automatically does is it automatically takes me onto my sheet layer that I specified, and I can see that I have this what is called a viewport. It's selected. if I look up in my object info palette, it says viewport. I can move this object. It's like a window into my design layer. And what it did is there's a rectangle you can see around my entire floor plan. So because there was nothing else on my floor plan, it cropped this image, this viewport image, to the perimeter of the objects on that design layer. So I can easily manipulate my drawing. I can rotate it. I can place it on my sheet. I can see too that in doing so, I'm going to actually undo what I just did. I can see also that in doing so, it gave me this title. So remember, it was drawing number 1, main floor, and the scale I specified was 1/4 inch. So I can see that it doesn't fit on my page. I can go into my sheet layers and I can right click on my main floor plan sheet layer and edit. And I can go to my page setup, printer setup. I actually want my portrait orientation and hit OK, OK, OK. And I can see this fits a little bit better. I can shift and use my arrow keys to nudge, except it doesn't quite fit in this case. So with my viewport selected, there's multiple things I can change with this. I can go and I can change what layers are visible. So say if I wanted to show my second floor plan, if I had a second floor plan with my main floor underneath but grayed, I can go into my layers and I can be like, actually in this case, I can show a grayed roof plan. I hit OK and I can see my grayed roof plan over top. I can go to classes and I could change the visibility. So in this case, I want to turn off, let's see, I'll turn off my notes and my room notes and my general notes and hit OK. And I can see it takes away those room labels. So sometimes we want to hide things or make invisible things that we created that were used or visible when we created the viewport. Sometimes after we've created the viewport, we are going to create new classes or new layers and we want to add those. It remembers the class and layer visibilities when we created the viewport. So if we change anything after, we don't have to recreate the viewport, we can just change the visibilities. So in the object info palette with our viewport selected, we can change our layer visibilities and our class visibilities. I can also change the scale. So in this way, we've drawn all our plans at a 1/4 inch scale, but it's not going to fit on this sheet. So I can then go, instead of redrawing everything or in the beginning trying to figure out what scale is going to fit on what size sheet paper, I can just draw in 1/4 inch scale like a standard, and then with my viewport selected, I can go, actually I want this at 3/16 to a foot, and now that fits on my...
So it's not 1/4 inch scale anymore?
No.
But don't people prefer that?
Yes, and this is where usually you'll be setting it up for ArchD, right? So ArchD is our 24 by 36. And so, but if we're doing presentation drawings, then we could just be like, actually this is, if we're wanting to print it on a tabloid, say we have a tabloid printer at home, then we could just change the scale, make sure it fits, and print it off. And see, in changing the scale, this title block also, or this title also changed and changed my scale to 3/16 to a foot, okay? So it's associated with the image, with the viewport settings. The rest we won't really get into. Now, this is a viewport. There are going to be, and if right now I can see that this title is overlapping the roof, and I don't actually want it to do that. So if I double click on the viewport, I can see what happens is it brings up this edit viewport dialog box. So I can edit the annotations, I can edit the crop, and I can go edit and go directly back into my design layer. So right now I'm going to edit annotations and hit OK. And what happens is it has selected this drawing label. So right now our annotations are like notes that are on top and attached to our drawing layer. So this is a note, and I can just click and drag this down if I want to, and I like that location better. And then I can see that I'm in my viewport annotation because there's this yellow border around the entire drawing. I can go exit viewport annotation, and that takes me out into my sheets. Okay, so I can double click on my viewport again. I can edit my crop this time and hit OK. Now, what happened was it just automatically created this crop around my drawing. There's no real shape here. If I go select all, there's nothing in my selection or my object info palette, but I can use a rectangle and I can create a border if I wanted to. And I can exit my viewport crop, and I can see that now that border is my crop, that outer boundary. I can also double click on this again and edit my crop and hit OK. And now I can say, I'm going to crop it here and exit viewport crop, and see it cuts off that section of my design layer that was outside that crop. So there's going to be cases where, say, you have, you just want to show a section, and I don't even have to use a rectangle. I could use a circle, for instance. So I could double click on this, edit my crop. I could delete that object and say I want to draw a circle, and I just want to focus on, I'm going to make this a bit bigger, and I'm going to move it. I just want this viewport to focus on my kitchen. So I can exit, and I just have that kitchen detail. Okay. I'm going to double click back on my viewport. I'm going to edit my crop, and I'm going to delete that. And now if I exit my viewport crop, I have my full design layer, or full main floor plan visible. I can double click on my viewport again and go into my design layer. I can specify which design layer I want to go into. In this case, I'll go to my main floor plan and hit OK. I can make changes. Say, for instance, I'm going to delete this line. I'm going to move this down, and I can return to my viewport, and it's made those changes, or those changes that I made on the design layer are visible in this viewport. Now, what I can also do is, from my design layer, I can go into, say, I'll go into my main floor plan, and I can go, so again, remember that kitchen detail I did? This time I can create a circle, and with that circle selected, so up in my object info palette it says circle, I can go view, create viewport, and usually it'll ask you, I've already said yes to that, but it'll say, do you want to use the selected object as a viewport crop? and I can say yes or no. In this case, I'd want to say yes. My drawing number 2 is drawing number 2, and I can say kitchen detail and 1/4 inch scale and hit OK. And so that viewport is there. I can send this one back. So for instance, if I had this on my main floor plan, it's now at 3/16 to a foot. So I could put that on my drawing and then say I wanted my kitchen detail larger. And in this case, it's going to be at a 1/4 inch to a foot. So I could have this smaller and then I want this in more detail, and it show this at a larger scale. Okay. Is that everything?